Welcome everyone to the Two-Sided Truth DebateCast, where we debate it, defend it, and then you decide. A debate cast where the facts are presented and you decide the winner. I am your host and moderator, Lisa Tracy, and I'd like to give a shout out to all of our truthers out there who are subscribed to the Two-Sided Truth debate platform. Our sponsors for this evening's podcast DebateCast is the Flip Side with Lisa Tracy and Shy High Apparel. I'm so excited that you decided to join us this evening. Tonight, we have two debaters with opposing views, Maurice D. and Michael Ferguson, debating on the topic, ICE enforcement, public safety, or civil rights concern. We have a new prediction feature where it predicts tonight's winner of the debate. We have a new prediction feature where you can predict tonight's winner of the debate before the first topic starts. If you're subscribed and you choose correctly, you can win 50 engagement points, where you're one step closer to getting a badge or a discount off of the Flipside merch store at the flipsidewithlisatracy.com. Results will show up at the end of the debate. So here are the rules of engagement. Our debaters have 5 rounds to debate. The first 4 rounds are 8 minutes long, which includes debaters laying out their arguments and presenting their facts. Each debater will both have a chance to respond before moving to the next round. The last round is our sparring round, which is our debate or die round, where our debaters get a chance to ask each other questions and respond. We made the last round triple points just in case there's a tie. In the case that there is a tie, at the end of our last round, our AI agent, Ardent, will determine the winner. You, as the viewer, will vote. You will have a chance to vote on each round. We also encourage you to make comments in the chat, but we ask that you are respectful with your comments. Our debaters have worked hard to present their arguments and their topics. So this message, is to our debaters and our viewers. It's okay to be emotional and passionate, but we want you to be respectful. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, etc. However, you can only cast your vote on the two-sidedtruth.com. So at the end of this debate, we will have a winner because you would have voted. So let's begin. All right, we have our debaters. Let's welcome our debaters, Maurice Williams and Michael Ferguson. Maurice, you probably don't know this, but the person that's on my left always goes first. And of course, you're on my left. So please tell our viewing audience a little bit about yourself and what position you hold in this debate.
Hi, I am Maurice Williams. I am a pastor, a minister. I am holding the position of ICE regarding immigration and them being able to do their job. I'm excited about this debate on today. Love the show and look forward to sparring with my brother Michael.
All right. Thank you so much, Maurice. Michael Ferguson is not new to the Two-Sided Truth, but he was also a winner of one of our previous debates. Michael, introduce yourself and let the world know a little bit about you and what side of the debate you're on this evening.
Yes, thanks for having me, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Ferguson. I'm a cybersecurity professional. I work with a lot of government contracts, and I am here tonight excited to debate about the ICE. I'm on the side that ICE poses a threat as it's been implemented to the civil rights of many individuals here in the United States.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to remind our viewing audience, remember your job here is to vote, right? Vote at the two-sidedtruth.com. You are only allowed to vote once without being subscribed or signed in. Subscriptions are free. We don't spam you. We just send you a text once a week letting you all know, hey, what show is coming up so you can be a part of our viewing audience. So please subscribe with us. If you are subscribed to the Two-Sided Truth, check out our leaderboard The more you interact and vote and comment, the more points you earn to receive different badges and discounts to our merch store. If you're looking to support us, buy some merch. Check out our merch store at the flipside with lisatracy.com, and you'll also be able to see the shirts and things like that we have. Also, don't forget we have our AI agent Arden listening this evening. He doesn't take sides, he doesn't have feelings, and he cannot be charmed. So he will be fact checking. And at the end of the debate, Arden gives his own verdict of who he believes won. So before we get started, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back and go straight into round one. The Two-Sided Truth debate platforms let you vote for the best debater. Just click the Live Now, Watch Live Debate tab to watch an ongoing debate and explore the Active Voting Guide and Comments tab. On the Active Topic page, you can see the debaters and their current topics. Click a debater's name to cast your vote, and you can also change it anytime. Once a topic ends, the next one opens for voting. You can also vote multiple times. For extra help, check the Voting Guide tab and join the conversation by leaving comments and interacting with other viewers. All right. This is our first round, and of course, it is our fire starter round. Light the flame, light the match, and state your case. All right. So just to give you a brief history, I'm going to read a little bit of historical relevance. But before then, I want to encourage our viewing audience. If you're looking at this on the two-sidedtruth.com, the pre-debate is open. So you can cast your vote on who you think is going to win tonight's debate before the topics begin. So after I read this, the topics will begin and the pre-debate will be closed. So ICE was created during a period of heightened national fear after 9/11, when the government prioritized homeland security and immigration enforcement more aggressively than ever before. Supporters argue ICE exists to enforce laws already on the books and maintain order within the immigration system. Critics argue enforcement often appears inconsistent, politically driven, or disproportionately focused on certain communities. Immigration enforcement has long been one of the most divisive issues in America, but the debate intensified after the creation of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, in 2003. Following the September 11th attacks, the U.S. government reorganized national security efforts under the Department of Homeland Security. ICE was created with the mission of enforcing immigration laws, preventing illegal border activity, combating human trafficking, and protecting national security. Over the years, ICE has operated under multiple presidential administrations, each with different enforcement priorities and political temperatures. Some administrations focus heavily on deporting violent criminals and national security threats, while others expanded broader immigration enforcement efforts, workplace raids, detention operations, and expedited removals. Supporters argue ICE is a necessary law enforcement agency protecting Americans and maintaining the rule of law. Critics argue ICE has become a symbol of fear, family separation, racial profiling concerns, and government overreach. According to the Department of Homeland Security, hundreds of thousands of removals and detentions have occurred over the years, while immigration courts and civil rights groups have also documented legal challenges involving detention conditions, due process concerns, and enforcement tactics. Tonight's debate asks a difficult question that continues to divide the country. Is ICE protecting public safety, or has immigration enforcement crossed into civil rights concern? All right, Maurice, you are up. Subtopic number one: the law and order or selective enforcement. The history of ICE, and is ICE upholding the law or picking and choosing who it applies to? You have a total of 2 minutes to state your case.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's remember one thing as we go into this debate, that our debate tonight is not over immigration reform or over legal immigration. We all know that allowing unvetted people to flow from place to place poses a serious public safety threat, which is why we don't permit such actions even at our own homes. We have a fence, we have cameras to monitor movement, and we have a door to allow those in who we are comfortable with into our living spaces. Tonight, we will debate what we are to do with those who have willingly broken the law and illegally entered the United States of America. My opponent may appeal to you on the basis of sympathy for the plight of the illegal, the race of the illegal, or the good behavior of the illegal. But the fact still remains a crime was committed, and it is in the public's best interest to deal with all criminal activities, including illegal immigration. Our law enforcement agency, as we stated earlier, to deal with this is ICE. A crime has been committed and must be dealt with. Now, the interesting thing about the policy that is currently in place, it is the same policy that Barack Obama instituted in November of 2014. And that is that they would prioritize the worst offenders first and repeated offenders and go after them, and then take a look at other illegals in the population.
All right. Are you done, Maurice?
Yes.
Okay. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and we're also streaming live on the two-sidedtruth.com. You don't forget to vote. The polls are open for you all to vote in this round. All right, round one, Michael, law and order or selective enforcement. The history of ICE, and is ICE upholding the law or picking and choosing who it applies to? 2 minutes.
Yes. And tonight we're debating the constitutionality of ICE. We're debating the Constitution, and everything that happens as far as law enforcement must be always measured against the law and what the Constitution says. So I'm going to first piggyback on what my brother Maurice said about the worst first and then everyone else. Unfortunately, statistics and the data that's out there have shown that this has not been the way that ICE operations have been executed. Based on CBS News reports, statistically, 14% of people that have been arrested by ICE in 2025 had violent criminal records. More than 86 of the ones arrested and detained by ICE, and we're talking about illegal immigrants, were not violent offenders. So if that was the purpose of what they're doing, then they're not. That the data shows that it's not effective, the tactics and the strategies that they have. And that leads me into my next point. It is an issue of constitutionality, because according to the 14th Amendment, there is a due process that is given to not citizens. Due process applies to persons. That's the language in the Constitution, a due process of a person in the United States. So due process has different protections under the law, that you cannot just profile people based on what they look like. We've seen this before with Black people not too long ago. Our grandparents and our great grandparents remember when it was us. Because we were Black, we had the certain fountains we couldn't drink at. Because we were Black, there were certain institutions we couldn't study at. But now it's changed and it's morphed into that. So the Constitution hasn't changed. Due process applies to persons in the United States, not citizens. So everyone has, and you cannot not be subject to unlawful, unreasonable search and seizure as a person in the United States. And that's not how it's been applied.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael, for that. All right, you all, the polls are open. The polls are open. Don't forget to cast your votes on the two-sidedtruth.com. We're streaming on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, but you can only cast your vote on the two-sidedtruth.com. Don't forget to subscribe to us. Subscriptions are free 99. We don't spam you or anything like that. Subscribe to us. All right, Maurice, would you like to counter?
Yeah, so yes, ma'am. So one of the things we shouldn't kid ourselves about is our top 5 offender countries are Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and the Dominican Republic. All of these are have a close border with the United States. You can walk across the border, you can drive across the border, you can swim across the border. And so the reality of it is, it's an easy crossing. And so naturally, because it is an easy crossing, those are the people that you're going to have the most deportations from. You're not going to have a lot of deportations from people from Europe simply because it's more difficult to cross over. I think one of the main issues that Michael would have to accept is that a crime actually has been committed. And this issue with illegal immigration, many people don't want to recognize it as a crime. They want to diminish what has occurred. They'll say, well, it is a civil crime. It is something that happened that is dealt with in civil courts. Yes, it is dealt with in civil court. However, it is a misdemeanor crime. And if you are deported and returned, that misdemeanor becomes a felony. And that is because the initial act was, in fact, a crime, and it should be dealt with as a crime, which brings me to this point. He talked about how it wasn't the violent offenders that were being deported. The fact of the matter is, whether you're violent or not, you still committed a crime. That's just like somebody breaking into your home and they didn't commit violence to get in. They still trespassed on your property. They still committed a crime, and it still has to be dealt with.
All right. Thank you so much, Maurice. All right, Michael, would you like to counter?
Yes.
2 minutes.
Yes, and I agree with Brother Maurice. It is a crime to enter the United States illegally. That is absolutely a crime to enter the United States. The issue that is borders on that gets into the civil rights aspect of the conversation is how they go about enforcing the law and enforcing that crime. If I committed a crime in my house, the Constitution lays out rules for how the law enforcement can interact. I can commit a crime, but what we have to have is probable cause. So we have to have probable cause that consists of, in order for them to come in my house and arrest me, they have to have probable cause in order to execute a search warrant. So probable cause they cannot go to the judge and say, because he's Black and because I know that Black people usually commit these crimes, then that's enough probable cause. It's not the fact that, yes, they have entered illegally, but it's the tactics and ways that they're going about enforcing the law is what the problem is. You're profiling based on, they see a group of people that look like they're from Latin America. There's a lot of citizens that are full citizens that are of Latin origin and Latin descent. So you can't just say because you see somebody on the street that, oh, I'm going to target him because he speaks Spanish and he's Latino, so he must be here illegally because the closest countries to us are Latin countries. There's a lot of people from Latin countries that are American citizens, have their full-fledged naturalized citizens from Mexico, from other countries that border our states. The problem comes in when ICE is not just operating at the border. They're in the cities, in the streets, pulling people over with nothing more, not even reasonable suspicion other than they look like they're Hispanic. Again, we've seen this story before. We've seen Black people be profiled because they're walking down the street, stop and frisk. We've seen all of this. We've seen this story before. This time it's not us, it's them. So it's not a matter of if a crime is being committed. It's how, if the government can use the constitutional parameters that they have in order to enforce the law, which they're bound by law.
All right. Thank you so much for that. All right. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram, but you can only cast your vote on the two-sidedtruth.com. All right. Let's go to the comment section. Michael Crenshaw says both raise good points. With that said, we cannot ignore the 14th Amendment. Would any of you all like to respond to that?
Well, here, when we talk about, we bring in the racial aspect of the situation. We talked about how people are within close parameters. And not saying that justifies, oh, you just go pick up a person of Latin descent and assume automatically that they are illegal. But we can't play the game that's not who it is. We can't ignore the fact that is actually where the problem lies.
Okay, thank you so much. Hatley says the irony is Texas governor started this crime. I find this interesting. So I have a few questions. Michael, is it really fair to compare what's going on with ICE and compare it to slavery. So I heard you bring up, Black people and how, Black people at one time, we were not able to drink from certain water fountains or go in certain communities in certain neighborhoods. Surely that's not what's happening with the illegal immigrants, correct? What's happening with the illegal, they're not being stopped to say, hey, you can't go to this particular place and you can't visit here. What's happening is that they're saying, hey, are you legal here? Did you come here legally? So therefore, because you're not here legally, we possibly can arrest you. Is that really happening? Is that really fair to compare slavery in terms of what's happening through ICE?
So I just want to make sure I make it clear. I never mentioned slavery. That's a totally different time period.
Okay.
I'm talking about during the time of Jim Crow, which is almost 100 years after slavery, when we couldn't drink at certain water fountains. The police were racially profiling Black people based on the color of their skin. So the only parallel I'm trying to draw is that the police are looking at somebody based on the color of their skin. This person can be a legal citizen. There's a lot of legal citizens that look like Mexican and Hispanic people that are legal citizens. You can't just stop without any other reason other than race.
Okay, thank you so much for that. All right, Maurice, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do sanctuary policies undermine federal law enforcement authority?
Yes.
How so? 30
So,
seconds.
okay, so it is Congress that establishes law. So if we have a set of laws on the books regarding immigration and how it is to be carried out, a city should not go in, or the administrators of that city should not go in and just decide, hey, we're not going to follow the law. That law that Congress has set up affects the entire United States. So one city government deciding that affects everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right, you all, we are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, but you can only cast your vote on the two-sidedtruth.com. Come on over. You can stream here. You can watch here. You can vote here. You can chat here. You can do all the things that you can do on the other platforms besides vote. And we want your vote. All right. We are moving on to round 2. And round 2, of course, is trial by fire. Face the heat, and of course, defend your position. Public perception of ICE has shifted dramatically depending on the political climate and presidential administration. Under some presidents, enforcement activity received relatively little public attention. Under others, images of workplace raids, family detentions, deportation operations, and viral social media footage intensified fear and political division. Supporters argue enforcement naturally creates discomfort because laws are being enforced. Critics argue that the tactics themselves create widespread fear that extends beyond undocumented immigrants into entire communities. This round explores whether fear is an unavoidable consequence or enforcement, or evidence that enforcement has gone too far. Michael, you are up. All right.
Yes.
Subtopic number 2, protection or fear tactics. Excuse me. If people are afraid of ICE, is that safety or control? What was the temperature with other presidents? You have 2 minutes.
Yes. So I would say that we have to use a correct lens when we judge the past, because there's a lot of things different now with social media, phones everywhere, cameras everywhere, that is pretty much almost recent within the last 10 years with the escalation of social media. We didn't have that going on in the past. And so I think that's what we have to use at the lens. I think that fear is something that's detrimental to law enforcement. I sometimes work with law enforcement agencies, and I know that they rely heavily on the community in order to report crimes and report things that's going on. Police, there's not enough police officers to be everywhere at one time. They need the community to give information. We call them informants. Some circles, they call them snitches. But if it wasn't for those people, a lot of big time crimes would never be solved. So the community engagement with law enforcement, it can't be a wall. It needs to be a collaboration. And unfortunately, in certain communities where people don't feel comfortable or trust law enforcement, they're less likely to bring forth information. Sometimes even with immigration enforcement, immigration, ICE have received tips that there's people being held up at a certain location that they would have never otherwise known about. And sometimes these are reported by people of the same race and the same culture. But if there's a feeling that there's inequities, if there's a feeling that there's unjust, then that raises a wall between community helping and working with law enforcement, and then they tend to stay away. So I think that when we're looking at the lens of what we're seeing now, and it looks like more fear, ICE is in the streets, they're shooting people, they're pulling people out. People that are American citizens. I'm talking about white people. I'm talking about white people that got shot and killed by ICE agents up in Minnesota. So when we see that, then the community tends to draw back because those optics work against what law enforcement is trying to do and working with the community.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, the polls are open, you all, for this topic. The polls are open. All right, Maurice, same question: protection or fear tactics? If people are afraid of ICE, is that safety or control? What was the temperature with other presidents?
So I have to argue that it is about control. I mean, the number one goal is to control illegal immigration, and fear by itself does not prove abuse. I mean, I think most Americans fear audits. We fear warrants by police, but that doesn't mean that those agencies should disappear. If we would have made it clear that our immigration laws would have been enforced, we would have fewer illegals to deal with today. So in 1986, Ronald Reagan gave amnesty to legalize about 2.7 million illegals under the IRCA. Now, today, 40 years later, because we did not follow through and we did not enforce those laws, we rewarded bad behavior. And we know that rewarded behavior is repeated behavior. Today, we're dealing with between 20 and 30 million illegals. And I know the government, they'll come out with numbers telling you that it's about 11 million. Those are 11 million that they have documented, the ones that they captured, but they can calculate the getaways. So we're talking about between 20 and 30 million that we're dealing with, all because we did not enforce the law. There should be a healthy fear of society that if you break the law, that there is going to be a punishment that is going to occur. If you get a speeding ticket and you don't take care of that speeding ticket and they put out a warrant for your arrest, every time you pass by a police officer, you're looking over your shoulder, and rightfully so, because they want you to obey the law. If we don't have any enforcement of those laws are merely suggestions. And we can't run a society where we just have a list of suggestions saying, hey, we want you to do this. But if you don't, nothing is going to happen to you. There should be a healthy fear. As far as what other people did, we got to remember that Barack Obama deported more than President Trump did.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, Michael. Same question. Protection or
Yes.
I'm sorry. Do you want to counter? You're countering.
I just want to counter that real quick. Yes. Now, Brother Maurice seems like his follow the law is seem like it's one directional. It's follow the law for the citizens, but it's never follow the law for law enforcement. And most of us realize that law enforcement has laws that they have to abide by too. It's called the Constitution. That's why a law enforcement officer, just because he receives information that there's a crime committed in somebody's house that is very much protected by the Constitution, he has to go before a judge and he has to write out why he thinks that is, because law enforcement officers has to follow the law in enforcing the law. It's a two-way street. So the same laws that the citizens and immigrants have to follow and is the same one that law enforcement has to follow in executing the law. There's guidelines. If it wasn't, there would be chaos, even in law enforcement. And we have to understand and seen time and time again where there's been abuses by various members of law enforcement in enforcing the law. And so we have to have the same energy and the same checks and balances that we have for the immigrants. And I believe, yes, they should, the law should be enforced, but the enforcers of the law should be follow the law as well. And unfortunately, what we've been seeing out here is an abuse of, again, due process, when we see them enforcing the law, they're just grabbing people. Let's just say what it is. We've all seen it, what's been going on. They're grabbing people. They're not having an interview, asking them, even, can I see your license? Are you a citizen? These people, I've seen many videos where they just walk up and grab them. And then they ask questions once they take them, detain them, take them into a detention facility. And then they ask, well, that's not how would you feel if you're walking down the street as an American citizen and the police just walk up to you and take you into custody just because you look a certain way? And so, again, that goes outside the range of what the laws that the law enforcement officers are bound by the Constitution. It's outside of that realm. So,
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. You can only cast your vote on the two-sidedtruth.com. Maurice, would you like to counter?
I would. So
2 minutes.
I'm not against oversight of any organization. You have bad people in all professions. I think one of the problems, though, our communities have developed this taste for perfect policing. And that demand for perfect policing has led to passive policing, which has led into an increase in crime within our communities. Do mistakes happen? Absolutely. And those mistakes should be looked at, and we make those particular adjustments. There are times when American citizens, yes, they do get profiled. You fit the profile of somebody that just robbed a bank. Yes, the police may pull you over. Your car matches the description. You match the description. They pull you over. You answer the question. You're off on your way. And so those type of things do happen. The abuse that is being portrayed on television is just not what that is. He made mention that people are just being snatched up for no reason. No, there's a reason. Typically, you have an illegal hanging out with somebody who's not an illegal. And so in that particular case, yes, both of you guys can be taken into custody. If I'm hanging out with a drug dealer, I may not be a drug dealer myself, but when that drug dealer gets pulled over, both of us going downtown because they have some questions. The people that he made mention of that were shot and killed by ICE, they were interfering with a law officer's interaction with the criminal. That can happen to any American citizen. You don't interfere with the law enforcement. They're trying to arrest somebody and you're creating chaos, or you're trying to run them over with the car. Yes, there's going to be a violent response to that. There's going to be action that's going to take place. And law enforcement never looks pretty. That's something that we got to get out of our head.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, let's go to the comments. Tariq says the reason why Hispanics are profiled is because they are the majority of illegal immigrants. There is no political way to remove millions of people. In what way does ICE enforcement harm Black people? And the reason why white people get shot is because they are obstructing law enforcement. ICE is not going around bothering American citizens. It's the American liberal trying to overstrict, and that's why they are being dealt with this way. Would anyone like to respond to that comment?
Yeah, I would like to respond to that.
Okay,
So I've seen, I didn't notice that an unarmed citizen, even if, let's take the one where the gentleman was, he was stopping them from running. I'm not talking about the vehicle. I understand that. That's a deadly force situation. A vehicle is a deadly force, is a deadly object. But the gentleman that was stopping and just wrestling, I didn't realize that was punishable by death, by shooting. You just pull out a gun, a police officer pulls out his gun and shoots him. And there was at least 8 or 9, 10 officers against one man. So that's punishable by death because he was interfering. Okay. Okay.
All right. And I have another comment. Hotley says Obama administration was about safety. They literally enforced the laws via the courts, not with a covert ICE officer stopping or killing out in the streets. That's why the numbers show he deported more than Trump without ICE breaking down doors. Would anyone like to respond to that comment?
That's the issue we have a lot is the way that the media portrayed everything. Barack Obama deported 3.1 million illegals. He's also the one that had the cages for the migrants. But you never saw those pictures until Donald Trump took office. And then they tried to blame the Trump administration for the kids in cages. And all of a sudden, everybody got up in an uproar when the fact of the matter is, it was Barack Obama who actually did it.
All right. Thank you so much for that. All right, Michael, I have a question.
Sure.
So can you, I don't want to say can you admit, but do you see that there's a difference between what how the media is covering President Trump versus how they covered President Obama? Even because, of course, social media existed when President Obama was in office.
Right.
So can you admit that there is a difference? There's a stark difference between how they portray?
Yeah, I mean, I think the difference is that you have a president that claims that he doesn't have to, he's above the law, and so some media outlets, like if you look at Fox News, they portray a certain way, and if you look at CNN, it's a certain way. Again, I like that commenter said, we did not see, and we're not seeing talking about the media. I'm talking about what private citizens are posting on the internet. That's not the media. These are people with their camera phones. So that's what I'm going by, not necessarily what the media say. I'm saying what I see on Facebook.
Okay, thank you so much. So Maurice, do you believe that some tactics that ICE were using or are using is to create fear, designed to create fear on purpose? 30 seconds.
I do, and me personally, I have no problem with people being afraid of breaking the law and the consequences, or the consequences of breaking the law. Many people have actually self-deported because they didn't want to be arrested. They didn't want to take the risk of the embarrassment of being removed from their community. I'm in Fort Worth, and every year they have what they call the Fort Worth Roundup, and they let you know, hey, everybody that got a warrant, we're coming after you. And that's to get you to come and take care of your ticket ahead of time. And many people go voluntarily and take care of those tickets because they don't want the embarrassment.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, Michael. So how much community involvement is too much when someone is breaking the law or when the police is making an arrest? Because I do remember seeing videos, even videos that people put on social media themselves, where they called themselves being, I guess, vigilantes themselves, right? So how much involvement is too much? Is there a such thing as too much involvement from the community when a police officer is trying to make an arrest?
Are you talking about hindering the police from making an arrest?
Hindering the police from making arrests, blockades,
chasing
the police down?
No, I don't think. I think it's a right. The Constitution, the Supreme Court has ruled that you can record a police officer in public doing his official duties. I don't think that's hindering. I don't think that's hindering at all. I think running that, as long as you're not stopping the police, if you're following them with your camera out, how is that a hindrance? We're documenting. If you're doing everything above board, you shouldn't have a problem with it being out in the open.
But as long as anybody. Right. But you do agree that some of these things were like, it wasn't just about, like looking at them with your phone, right? Documenting them with your phone. It was also yelling in their faces.
That's an assault. I don't agree with that.
Or using your truck or ramming into the police officer or using your truck to block them from going.
I don't think they should violently oppose the police from carrying out their function. The same way I don't believe a police should just pull out his gun and shoot somebody because they don't have a weapon and they're other circumstances where there's more officers than there are the offender. So,
okay, Maurice. So why do you believe that it's okay to invoke fear when it comes to things like what ICE is doing? Do you think, is there possibly a better way, like what President Obama was doing? Is that approach better versus what President Trump has done or what he's been doing?
Well, the fear tactic was there to really get people to self-deport. If they self-deport, it's less money coming from the taxpayer. I mean, if you think that we got to take these people and we got to now run them through the court system, and then you got to provide transportation to take them back. Meanwhile, while you're waiting on this whole process, you got to house them, you got to feed them and all of that. It's a lot cheaper if they're afraid of being arrested for them to self-deport and they take care of it out of their own dime. And as a matter of fact, the Trump administration was giving them $1,000 to self-deport. I think it was $1,000 to $2,000 to leave on your own.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, you all, we are moving to round 3. All right, round 3, under pressure. This is where arguments are tested. All right, you all, let me get back to my notes here. All right, round 3. All right. ICE operates under federal immigration law and government authority, yet the agency has repeatedly faced lawsuits and criticism involving detention practices, due process concerns, alleged profiling, and the treatment of detainees. Supporters argue every law enforcement agency faces legal scrutiny and that enforcement actions are necessary to maintain national security and legal order. Critics argue the number of legal battles and civil rights complaints reveal deeper systematic problems within the immigration enforcement itself. This round focuses on the tension between legality, accountability, and civil liberties. All right, Maurice, you are up again. All right, round 3, subtopic 3, lawful agency or civil rights liability. If ICE is within the law, why are there so many legal challenges?
Well, bottom line, it is political. And unfortunately, our court systems have become highly politicized. How do we explain 3-to-1 removal between Obama and Trump, both with the similar policies in place? Our political system, they want political power and they want cheap labor. One of the interesting things that happened was President Obama created the DACA program in June 15th of 2012. It was not passed by Congress as a law. And as a matter of fact, later a court came and determined that what he had done was unconstitutional. Trump comes into office, and in 2017, through executive order, just like this law was passed via executive order, Trump sought to overturn it via executive order, and the court told him that he could not overturn an executive order that was deemed unconstitutional. The only way to explain that is that it is completely political. One person removes 3 times as many as the other and gets no pushback. Has people locked in cages, no pushback, no cameras, no uproar from the public, no media attention. The other comes in and does 1 time that amount, and it's like the whole world is on fire. It's like, oh, he's just going after one demographic of people. And so simply people are being presented with this image, again, by the media, that it is racial in nature and that ICE is abusing their power. And so that they bring up one lawsuit after another to simply stall out the administration and try to keep the illegals here, again, because it's about political power at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, the polls are open, you all. The polls are open. You can only cast your vote on the two-sidedtruth.com. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, but you can only cast your vote here on the two-sidedtruth.com. It is free, $99. So come on and subscribe to us. All right, Michael, lawful agency or civil rights liability. If ICE is within the law, why are there so many legal challenges? 2 minutes.
Again, I would echo that there's so many legal challenges because, as Maurice mentioned, Obama did many more deportations in his time there, but similar policies, not similar tactics. The tactics that the Obama administration used was much different than what we're seeing now. And I would also argue that anytime you have a human being that has broken a law in cages, a cage, everybody that's incarcerated in prison right now for doing something illegal, I would argue they're in cage. I don't think it was such a big thing that Obama had constructed what we call cages, or what I would call a cell, to put somebody in that had broken the law. I just don't think Obama he didn't have his ICE agency out here racially profiling people. And again, they were going through the courts. Now they were enforcing there's a way that you can do this without it looking like this. There's a way, and that's what we need to speak with. There's a way that you can work with the community that you can, if Trump, this is from Trump. This is not from anybody else on Trump's campaign trail. He was saying, we are going after the violent of the worst. Trump put this fear tactic out here that we have these killers, murderers, rapists that we're going after. But the numbers and the data show that the people that he's arresting are not that. So if anybody has changed their position based on execution, it's Trump. Because if it wasn't for that, they can work with intelligence. This is the federal government. We send people to the moon. We got missiles that can drop on a pin, and we can't figure out how to get the worst of the worst, the violent of the violent offenders without just swooping up everybody in one thing and violating people's civil and constitutional rights. There's a way, and I agree that he should go get the worst, the Tren de Aragua. They should get all of them. They should get all the violence to make our community safe. But the way that it's being done right now is what's violating people's civil rights and civil liberties.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, Maurice, would you like to counter?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. So one, if cages were not an issue, why then did they wait and use those pictures against Donald Trump? We're saying that it was not a problem to have these people locked up in cages, but once the Trump administration came in and was doing their deportations during the first administration, all of a sudden they used the pictures from the Obama time. And then I guess my other question is, do we feel like nonviolent illegals should just be turned free? You happen to run across a nonviolent illegal immigrant up at Home Depot, and you find out that they're illegal. Should we just ignore it and turn a blind eye and say, oh, well, they're here to work and they're not hurting anybody? Yeah, they broke the law, but let's just let it go. See, we don't do that for U.S. citizens, which is the strangest thing. We don't allow a U.S. citizen to break the law, but because they were nonviolent, we turn them loose. That's not how it works. Violent or not, if you committed a crime, you get arrested. And I think, again, it goes back to how we have diminished the significance of illegal immigration. We just treat it as a suggestion. Yeah, they didn't quite follow the process. And so we just allow them in, and we will just ignore the fact that they broke the law.
All right, thank you so much. All right, you all, the polls are open for this subtopic. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, but you can only cast your vote on the two-sidedtruth.com. Michael, would you like to counter?
Yes, I would like to say yes. So I remember during Obama's tenure, they did cover those detention facilities. I think the reason why there's so much outrage about how it's been done now is because Obama, when he was doing it, he was keeping families together. They were incarcerated in cages, but they were together. I think the thing now that we're seeing is Trump is separating family members and families. He's separating kids are here, parents are there, they never get back. So instead of keeping these people together, if they're in one cohesive unit, they're separating them. But they surely covered that. I remember seeing that on NBC Nightly News was talking about those temporary detention camps because we had such a big influx of illegal migrants and they had to put them somewhere. They were stopping them at the border during that time, but they were putting them in those detention facilities there and keeping the families together. I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference when you take in Chicago here, we had a father that was taken into custody and he was an illegal immigrant, but he had a hold issued by a judge in the court. And the judge told them to turn that plane around, that he shouldn't have been deported. And they're sending him down to that, that prison in Central America. And the judge had made an order to turn the plane around. Now, I don't understand how we have courts and it's checks and balances how the United States government works. If a judge gives an order to do something, that's a check and balance on the executive branch because he just said that was unconstitutional for him to be deported the way it was. But instead, they keep the plane flying, ignoring the judge order, and instead of turning the plane around. So, that's the difference. And again, Trump is the one that said he was going after the violent offenders. There's nothing wrong with getting somebody. I'm just saying what Trump initially said he was going to do is not what he's doing.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. We got a few comments. Let's go to the comment section. Okay. All right. We see you. I see you all chatting. I see you chatting away. All right. So, Demetrius says, Maurice is bringing the heat. And I thought I saw another comment from him, but I guess, it said, did someone say that Texas governor started this? So Biden not closing the border wasn't the cause? And Jeff Watts says, the key constitutional principle involved is federalism under the 10th Amendment. Immigration enforcement is primarily a federal responsibility, but the federal government generally cannot force local governments to use their own officers or resources to carry out federal immigration enforcement. That concept has later been reinforced by multiple U.S. Supreme Court decisions. And Jeffrey Watts also says, sanctuary cities are our choice. Tariq says, in what way does ICE harm Black Americans for us to be so concerned? And then Jeff also says, of course, Trump is going to be more scrutinized. Then Demetrius says, why is it that only in sanctuary cities there are issues with ICE? Didn't the left leaders fly to El Salvador to vouch for a gang member? Anyone want to respond to any of these?
I don't think I'll respond to that. I don't think they were, yes, he was a gang member, of course, but I don't think that was the purpose of them going down there to vouch for the gang member. I think the purpose of them going down there was to vouch for the rule of law and the order that we have here when, as I said before, the order of a judge has been blatantly ignored. I mean, these people can talk to their military anywhere around the world. And if a judge gives an order, they could have radioed to that plane to change coordinates and fly back based on the judge's order,
So
Mm-hmm.
I have a question because Michael continues to bring up the judge's order. Why is it then that we still have DACA in place when the courts came out and stated that it was unconstitutional for Barack Obama to, in essence, try to give amnesty to illegal migrant children? If we're going to follow law and order, we got to follow law and order all the way around. They ruled that was unconstitutional, so DACA should have been gone a long time ago. But because that is in place, it continues to generate more illegals.
All right, Michael, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I don't totally understand the nuances of the understanding because I don't have expertise in the law as far as that's concerned. I know that to me it seems like if it was ruled illegal, it wouldn't continue to be executed. But then also the Supreme Court said that it's like a catch-22. Then Trump can't use his executive power to take something out that inevitably doesn't exist. That's the only way I understand it, because that's very confusing to me as well.
But it was
go ahead.
It was instituted by executive power, and so that's one of the rights of the president. So one president has executive orders, the next president can come and undo the executive orders. And if we like that executive order, then Congress has to get together and make that executive order a law, which they didn't do that with DACA. So by that principle alone, Trump should have been able to come in and completely do away with DACA, but the court stopped him from doing away with something that they deemed illegal.
All right. Thank you so much. I just want to read one more comment and then we're moving on. Trump administration asks Democrat municipalities to work with them. They don't, and they have to go within the neighborhood. And when they do, everyone is subject to the law. Anyone like to respond to that?
And that's absolutely true. New York State alone, according to DHS, New York, instead of allowing ICE to come and pick up these criminals, they released almost 7,000 criminals back into the community, even though ICE had detainers on them and had serious concerns about who these people were. New York released almost 7,000 back into the community, and that's just New York alone.
Okay, thank you so much. Tashaka, it's good to see you tonight. All right, we are moving on to our fourth round, which is the Inferno. This is the final blaze, and this is where the flames are high, either rise or get burned. All right, Michael, I think you're up next. Behind immigration policy are real people, families, workers, law enforcement officers, and communities. Supporters argue strong enforcement protects American citizens, preserves public safety, and discourages unlawful immigration. Critics argue the emotional and human costs of detention, deportation, and family separation create long-term damage that extends beyond immigration statutes. This final round asks whether immigration enforcement ultimately protects society or whether vulnerable families and communities bear the heaviest burden. Michael, safety versus humanity. Who pays the real price for enforcement? 2 minutes.
Yes, I think that the American society pays the price for unlawful enforcement of immigration laws. Again, as I said before, it's them today, maybe us tomorrow, or whoever. Like, I believe that I don't believe it's legal justification to say that we're safe because they're deporting a lot of people that are low level offenders. I think that I think if you're talking about safety, let's talk about safety. I believe that people that commit violent crimes should face the full extent of the law. I believe that people that, do anything that's wrong should face the full extent of the law. With limited resources that ICE has, I believe that they would be better fit if they're trying to make a safety type argument to get the person that's making us unsafe. Just by you being present here, yes, it's against the law. I'm not saying it's not. But if we're talking about safety, it's not unsafe for somebody to be here that's not harming. We can't assume that every illegal immigrant is a threat to our safety. That doesn't make sense. We have illegal immigrants here that are a safe threat to our safety, but data shows that the majority of them are still here because the way that they're going about doing this is not tactically sound. There is another way that they can do this. It's not so the way that it's been enforced is not safe because they're not getting the people that are making us unsafe as a society. Get the people that are the rapists, get the murderers, get the people that are killing. But don't make an argument that you have to spend most of your limited resources getting people that are not doing crimes that are just by them being here. Yes, it's illegal again, but it doesn't make us unsafe. If an immigrant has lived here 30 years and worked a job and never done anything to harm anybody, that doesn't make society unsafe. Go after the people that are doing the violent crimes. The data shows that they have not been successful in that effort.
Okay. The polls are open for you all on this subtopic. The polls are open. Cast your vote on the two-sidedtruth.com. Subscribe to us. We'd love to have you so you can get notified of all of the wonderful debates that we have coming up at Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. All right, Maurice. Safety versus humanity. Who pays the real price for enforcement? 2 minutes.
So one of the things throughout this whole debate that continues to happen, again, is people keep minimizing the legality of illegal immigration. A crime was committed. And U.S. citizens do not get to have the courtesy of having their families stick together if they commit a crime. If I commit a traffic violation, I have a warrant out for my arrest, I can have kids in the car on my way to a wedding anniversary or whatever. If I get pulled over and there's a warrant, guess what? I'm going to jail. I'm going to be separated from my family. There are plenty of people incarcerated that are U.S. citizens that were nonviolent criminals that are sitting in jail, separated from their families. And so to make that argument, well, we're separating people from their families and that's not humane, well, there's a couple of options. Number one, we could turn around and say to the illegal, you and your family will be all deported together. That's one option. The other option, if the child is born here, the parent goes back to their native country and the child goes into foster care. And that sounds very harsh, but that happens to American citizens every day. You can commit a white collar crime and your child will be taken from you, placed in the foster care. And you know what? That is a fear tactic. That is a deterrent for other people not to commit a crime. Hey, I don't want to miss my child's birthday. I don't want to miss their graduation. I want to make sure that I keep my family together. Guess what? I'm not going to go out and commit a crime. And so those are consequences that people have to deal with for their actions. I mean, it's an unfortunate one. We don't have to starve people. You can feed them, you can clothe them, but at the end of the day, you turn around and you send them back and you make sure that it is clear to everyone that the immigration laws will be enforced completely.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Michael, would you like to counter?
Yeah, I would. I would like to. It's an honor to talk with a pastor that knows the Word of God, that is knows what the Bible says, and he knows about Jesus, and how it was interesting how Jesus, throughout his lifetime, he went against the rules in Rome, against the Pharisees, the religious leaders of the time, and he healed people on the Sabbath day. That was a crime, and that was against the religious law of the time. But Jesus said, would you rather me follow the law or give this man his sight or heal this man? And so it's interesting as a pastor that, when it comes to humanity, and we're talking about safety and humanity, we're not talking about, a low level crime and separating and families and things. And I would always also like to think that the church is a refuge for people that. And so sometimes when we as Christians, I believe we also should let the love of God supersede the laws of the people. Now, I'm not taking that to say swinging such an argument that we shouldn't, enforce the law, because of course, according to Romans chapter 13, the Bible says we should be subject to the laws of the land. But I also think that love conquers all, and it's when we talk about safety, and I would still argue the point that if you're framing this in a safety argument and keeping it there versus humanity, and an illegal immigrant is just here and not posing a safety risk, then are we going to swing the pendulum so far to say we separating families? Those examples you use about people who breaking the laws, most of the time, they're not going to be forever unless they kill somebody. They're not going to forever be away from their family. They're going to get out of jail and go back to their family. You're talking about a temporary thing where people are separated and deported and sent to other countries. They probably will never see their family again. So we have to keep that perspective in place as well.
All right, Michael, thank you so much. All right, you all, the polls are still open for this subtopic. All right, Maurice, would you like to counter?
Yes, since Michael brought in the Bible, one of the other commandments of Scripture tells us that we should not show partiality to people. So, and that means that we ought to treat everybody equally, everybody fair. So you can't have one set of rules for citizens and then a different set of rules for illegals. You can't do that. Everybody has to be on the same playing field. Otherwise, society begins to break down because you have chaos. Because why should I, as a citizen, obey the laws when somebody from a different country can come over and they don't have to obey the laws? They don't have to worry about being separated from their family. Why should I turn around and obey the laws? And that's where you start getting this chaos. Now, with you made mention of people being nonviolent and they were just here. But the question I really think that we got to ask ourselves, if we apply these principles to our own home, to our own domain, as I stated earlier, would we allow someone who is nonviolent to come into our home, take up residence with us, begin to use our resources? Yeah, they may get up and go to work every day and they just decide, hey, I'm going to live with you. Would we turn around and tolerate that? They may even come in and do maintenance around your house, clean up, take care of your yard, but they came to your home without your permission. They moved in and you didn't invite them. You don't know where they came from. You don't know what disease they have. And then they begin to want you to conform to their way of life. Would you tolerate that in your own private residence? And the fact of the matter is, we all know we would not tolerate that. We would be on the phone with the cops, calling the police, telling them, hey, these people have moved into my house. Yeah, they got a family, they got several kids, but they came to my house. Now, the Christian thing, I may feed them, but you can't stay with me. You got to leave.
All right. Thank you so much. We're streaming live on Facebook, social media, and YouTube. But you can only cast your vote on the two-sidedtruth.com. All right. I have a question. And this is for both of you all. You could take 30 seconds to answer this. How do you suppose we deal with 10 million plus illegal immigrants? Because as I do remember Tom Homan coming out and saying, hey, we're going to deal with the violent offenders first. However, but if you happen to be an illegal and you're a non-violent criminal and you get in our way, we're not going to ignore you. We're going to arrest you as well. So Michael, maybe you can start first, 30 seconds. How do you suppose we deal with 10 million plus illegal immigrants that were let through during the President Biden administration?
Okay, so honestly, that would be the equivalent to asking me, how do you suppose I walk on water? There's no way that you're going to get 10 million people out of the United States with how many? Statistically, there's only 500,000 law enforcement officers in the United States. There's no way you're going to get 10 million people out of here. So I would propose that we be very surgical and strategic in getting the ones that are violent out of here and not focusing on the other ones.
Okay, thank you so much. Same question, Maurice, 30 seconds.
I say the way to do it, and I definitely believe that it's possible to focus on them all. Let them know, hey, if you get pulled over for a traffic stop, if you're here illegally, you will be deported. And not making this discretion where, hey, if you work at a meat packing plant, we're going to give you a pass. Or if you're building houses, we're going to give you a pass. Or if you haven't committed any other crimes, we're going to give you a pass. No, if you are an illegal, you will be deported. And you create that fear, and yes, some will self-deport.
Lisa, can I just rebut that?
You are about to respond. Hold that thought, because I'm about to bring up the debater. But we're going into the debater diary where you guys can go back and forth.
Okay.
All right. We're moving to our next round. This is our debate or die round. And this is the round where, of course, you say it with your full chest. No scripts, just the truth. This is our last round, and this is our sparring round, which is timed for 5 minutes. Maurice and Michael will have a chance to interact respectfully and ask each other questions and counter so they can go back and forth. This round is triple point. So if you have not voted, even if you have voted, this round is triple point. So when you vote, you're giving triple points to this person. So this is a shared 5 minutes. So you all can determine who wants to go first. Michael, you said you had a question. I guess we should kick it off with your question. You have 5 minutes where you can go back and forth. All right?
Yes. Throughout this debate, Maurice has had a common theme that there should not be any difference between one or the other, and there should not be a double standard. Although there is a double standard, there's a document double standard. If it affects the United States economy and national security, believe me, they will make an exception. And I point to the case in fact, when there was the Korean car factory plant and they was getting ready to deport all those Koreans, the United States reversed course because they needed those people to make those cars. And he determined that even though they're here illegally and out of status because of what they're doing, and it raises significant concern, we need to ignore our immigration laws. They also did that with those farmers that had immigrants working in the farm field. They have nobody to work. So they're illegal. So how would you say that you can't make an exception when they do it all the time?
So, Michael, I do concede, and I be honest with you, I totally disagree with that. That is what has brought us to the problem that we have today, where we got 20 to 30 million illegals because we have not enforced the law. And that needs to be done clear across the board, no exceptions. Again, not if you work at a meat packing plant, you get a pass. That should not be. My question, though, that I have for you is how would you deal with a non-violent person, not necessarily an illegal, but a non-violent person moving into your home?
Well, I think that's the apples and oranges argument. And the reason why I say that, because the effect, if somebody moves in my home, they have a direct impact effect on my everyday, day to day life because they're in my proximity. I think that the country cannot be equivalent to my house, which is this small, like a speck of sand on the beach compared to the holes, all the sand in the beach. If a person is living in the country and live in my house, that's a hard one to for me to put those together, because to me that's the apples and oranges. A person living in another city that's an illegal doesn't affect me here in Chicago and in my house. I don't think it's an equal comparison is what I'm saying. But I wouldn't let anybody in my house, to answer your question, that I didn't invite in my house.
So for me, the way that I turn around and looked at one of the, you brought up the Bible. So one of the things that scripture tells us that if you can't be faithful over a few things, you can't be a ruler over many. So how do I rule my own house? Right. So the way that I turn around and rule my own house, the way that I turn around and protect my own house is the same principles that I will use to protect the nation. If I have a fence around my own house, I'm gonna put up a fence around my nation. If I have cameras around my house, I'm gonna put cameras around my nation. I'm going to enact the exact same principles to protect my nation that I would my own house. And so, just like you said, you wouldn't tolerate a person, even though they were nonviolent, you wouldn't allow them to stay in your house. Most people would not do that. I mean, and I'm not saying that we have to be mean. Again, if you got somebody, most of the time the claim is they seek an asylum. You have a neighbor, they come in, they need help. They come to your front door. Yeah, I'm gonna turn around, I'm gonna reach out, I'm gonna help you. You're asking for my help. But if you come and you kick in my back door, you climb over my fence, then I'm thinking that your intentions are nefarious. You snuck into my domain. You came up on my property. You may be the nicest person, but because of the way that you entered, you may be nonviolent, but because of the way that you entered, now we got an issue.
Well, but and I agree with that. But then we have to look at what Lisa said. There are 10 million illegal people that had not just started with Obama. This did not just start with Biden. This has been going on for years and generations. So how do you effectively handle this? The answer is not to get the nonviolent. And I agree with you. They're breaking the law by the simple fact that they're here. But if we're talking about safety, which seems to be the overwhelming fact, and what people are more concerned about is safety. They're not concerned about people that are helping them keep that cost of food low, because they also concerned about the economy. And if you get all these illegals out, Americans are not going to work those jobs. The price of goods are going to go through the roof. You think gas is expensive now? Wait till you have to pay all this money for food, because they don't have Americans willing to do those hard labor that you want to do. So you spite your face, you spite your nose. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense.
Well, I think that there's a balance there. They would have to pay a living wage to these American citizens, but
causing your prices to go up. The living wage will cause your prices to go through the roof, and you have less money in your pocket.
We can't assume Americans won't do those jobs, though.
But paying them more money to do those jobs, we can know that economy says that price is going to go through the roof.
All right.
All right, you all. Great. First of all, I want to say thank you, Maurice and Michael, for both of you all being here this evening, debating. You all brought the fire, you brought the heat, you kept your positions, and I really appreciate that. So regardless of who wins tonight, I want both of you to come back, okay, and debate a topic. All right. Yeah. But of course, on the Two-Sided Truth, as you know, we always have a winner. And I have to say, the winner is Maurice D. Williams. Congratulations, Maurice.
Congratulations. Good job.
Great job. Both of you all
Thank
did
you.
really, really, really good. And I hope you all come back with you.
No,
Would either of you like to say anything before we close out?
I'd say Michael was a great sparring partner. Majority of the time I debate with somebody that disagrees with me, they don't have strong positions, and the next thing that comes up is you'll sell out, and they go with the name. I'm like, if you got the facts, just state your position.
Right.
Have a good debate, have a good argument. So, Mike, I greatly appreciate your hospitality.
Thank you. And again, I love debating, Maurice. I learned a lot from you, because sometimes, it's nice to see another standpoint and position. And that's how we learn, I believe, through this type of, civilized exchange.
Thank you so much.
Got to definitely do it again.
Absolutely. Yes, and don't forget to check out, after this debate ends, you can go check out Ardent, because he did give his own verdict on who he believes the winner is. Thank you all once again. Thank you to our debaters for debating. If you believe you can hold your own during a debate, and you love presenting facts, and you can civilly debate with passion, sign up to be a debater. Go to the two-sidedtruth.com, scroll down a little bit, and click the Become a Debater button, and then you'll fill out a form, and you'll get information on all of the upcoming topics that we have that are open for debate. And we're gonna have some doozies. We're gonna have some good ones this summer. I'm really excited. If you'd like to suggest a topic, go to the two-sidedtruth.com and click the Suggest a Topic button. It's right there. The Become a Debater and the Suggest a Topic button are side by side. So upload your topic. Thank you again to tuning in to tonight's debate. Join us for our debate next week. It is a doozy. And the debate for next week is, should child support be abolished? Join us for two debaters with opposing views, Jillian John Charles and Durante Lofton. If you want to keep conversations like this going, check out our newsletter, The Flip Side with Lisa Tracy, where we bring two perspectives with both sides of the story. Check us out at theflipsidewithlisatracy.com. Don't forget to subscribe to us. Like us on YouTube. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Like us on Facebook. And don't forget to subscribe to us here. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening.